it was just one of those like realizations that like certain things and certain fitness goals are well within people's reaches. And it's shocking sometimes the barriers we put between them because of what we see from a magazine or what we see from the outside view of a lot of things.
Hey everybody, welcome back to KCF Conversations. Today I am joined by Cade Strong. You guys all know him, one of our head coaches here. And we are kicking off a series where you're going to get to know the coaches a little bit. You know them as the leaders of the gym. They're up there coaching you through all of your classes. But we're going to take an opportunity to get to know them just a little bit better, find out a little bit on their backstory. So we're kicking this off with Cade, but continue to follow along, and you'll get to know all of our coaches over the coming weeks. So, Cade, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Howdy, everybody.
And let's go ahead and just kick it off and just tell us a little bit. Let's go way back, right? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you live as a kid?
So I was born in Fortuna, California, and we lived in Eureka, California. So it's Humboldt County. It's the northern 90 miles of California, so on the coast. My dad was a commercial fisherman, so he was out of there, but I was only there till 7. So
got it. Okay.
like I remember little bits and pieces, and then at about 7, my dad peeled out of that job and he wanted to start his own business, and he worked with boats and fishing boats, and so he wanted to be in a place where he could work with Alaska, but also along the coast in areas where fishing is. And so Seattle was it. And so we ended up on Bainbridge Island, of all places. And I stayed there until, I stayed there until about 18. We moved to Suquamish right after high school. And then I went back to Bainbridge as a volunteer firefighter. I lived at the station for about almost 4 years before going back to Humboldt for school. And then I came back here, ended up living on Bainbridge again. And then Suquamish again, and then finally Poulsbo. So, and I actually started working here. I was still living on Bainbridge when I first started working here,
right,
but only for a little bit.
Okay, so you went back to school at Humboldt.
Yeah.
What'd you study there?
So I went back. I went to Humboldt State. I had been going to school for fire science, with the intent of going into the fire department a little bit further. But when I went to a 4-year college, I decided when I went to Humboldt State, I was like, I want a degree of something I want to do. My mom was very adamant in the sense that like 90% of the people who get a degree in something don't work in that field. Yeah. And so I wanted to do something that was like interesting to me, and I enjoyed fish. I grew up with my dad as a fisherman, so it was something that it was always kind of drawn to, the ocean. But I went to marine biology. That lasted a year. And I had taken some classes in communication, which was kind of like some public speaking courses and just like general communication of like how do you talk and how do people communicate and movements and nonverbal stuff, that how they move and talk and look and whatnot. And it just kind of, it piqued my interest. It was something that in a weird sense, the fire department always harped like when things went wrong, it was communication. Yeah. Something failed in communication. This happened, communication breakdown. And so it was something that was always kind of brought up. Like, I was like, this seems like something that's very interesting, even though at the same point, it's not like a targeted field of something. But it really piqued my interest in like, oh, this keeps me intrigued, and it got me out of college a year earlier. And so I shifted majors after a year, and so I could get out a little quicker. But so it did shift over time, but I really enjoyed my time in marine biology. I kind of wish I had stayed in it and maybe taken it for the long haul, but I'm actually really happy where I ended up. So
yeah. I mean, I think that's just true with life, right? Like, you can always look back and go, man, I wish I had done this, but you are where you are because of what happened in the past, right? Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about athletics. What did you do? Sports, not just athletics, but what did you do? Sports, hobbies. Yeah. Pastimes, those types of things growing up.
Yeah, I was always kind of, I love sports. I wrestled in middle school. I played rec league basketball. I never went for the team. I don't know. I for some reason I didn't really feel like doing a team. I enjoyed the fun of it, but I didn't enjoy it so much all the time, the competition of it. I left wrestling after middle school and I went into football, and I stayed with that for 4 years.
Okay.
But I was always I played a lot of sports. I was always, I was a very coordinated kid. I had great accuracy with things, but I was not very strong. I was not very fast. I was well overweight as a kid growing up, especially in high school. And so it was something that I really enjoyed sports, but I didn't excel greatly at them, honestly. But I had fun. And that was I think that's where I enjoyed rec league basketball so much, is because we went in with a group of guys who were just let's go out and have some fun.
Right.
Like my high school rec league basketball team name was Gaston. And then we played the Gaston theme song from the Disney movies. So it was something we just got to enjoy, and I got to work out. And it wasn't until much later that I started to break into that competitive aspect of things with myself and with others. But I did that through high school with football. I started to, near the end of high school, started to run a little bit and do a lot more weightlifting. I started to really want to lose the weight and get a little bit healthier. At my top, I was 218 pounds in high school as a freshman, sophomore. So, but luckily, I was the same height I've always been. I got to my height at 6th, 7th grade, and then just leveled. So, but it was definitely big, and there was not very much muscle mass supporting it. And so, started to lose weight. I think by the time I ended high school, because of every day going to the weight room and running afterwards, I got down to in the 180s, okay. which is a typical weight for me now. It was still definitely not as muscular, but it was a huge progression.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal for a high schooler to lose 30 plus pounds, right?
Yeah.
So you said you were in the weight room, you were working out. We'll jump a little bit later. We'll talk a little bit more specifically about your nutrition coaching and such. Was there a nutrition focus then as well?
There was a bit, but it was very it was unfocused nutrition stuff. I knew from the random stuff you get told through TV or whatnot. So it's I started making my own sandwiches, and I didn't put mayonnaise on it. I made sure that I was eating carrots or something as my side and not chips. It was just trying to cut out certain random things. I think a lot of it for me was just not constantly eating or snacking or overeating. I was one of those kids that would come home from school and go to the pantry and what can I get to eat? And there's a box of mac and cheese. The first thing I ever learned to cook in my culinary career was mac and cheese, and I learned that at 6.
Right.
And so that was probably the worst decision I ever made in my life. And I try to stay away from it to this day, but that's dangerous food to me. So, so I started to work a little bit more on food, and that's really what kind of probably initiated a lot more of the weight loss.
Got it.
Especially during the high school periods. I'd still everyone has their ups and downs. Out of high school, boom, I gained weight right back. Joined the fire department, played around with that, started running again, would stop again. Went back to college, played around again.
College has a way of doing that.
It does, yeah. And then I joined the rugby team, and I started to work out again a little bit more lifting. But it really wasn't, I don't think I ever truly got focused into fitness until I shattered my arm playing rugby. And I consider that to be I shattered myself physically, but what it really did was shatter me mentally. It put me in this weird, initially I'll say, so it happened in January of 2007 or something, 2008. Shattered both bones of my left arm during practice. And so pretty much I was rugby's done. That's stupid. It's a great sport, but it wasn't for me. And so when that happened, there was an immediate depression side. I found myself leaving school and going to fast food. And on top of it, I was annoyed about where I was. This is it's so stupid, but it's real. I would get double Whopper with cheese, with a giant Diet Coke,
Of course.
And then I would go home and I would sulk at myself and watch The Biggest Loser. And I would just watch these people like grind on these things and just like destroy themselves while I ate burgers.
Yeah.
And like somehow that gave me solace in the sense that I wasn't that bad,
Right.
and all I was doing was just pushing myself towards there.
Yeah. I've eaten lots of ice cream while watching that show.
Oh, God, it's so tough. Like, part of it just makes you want to take in calories for how they're
Yeah.
burning. But so at one point, and I would say it took till spring break of that year. So it was about 2-3 months of just gross eating and bad depression and gaining weight. And I had this one mental break. Like, I knew I just needed to change what I was doing. I had driven back up here for spring break. I was staying with my sister the first night, and I woke up the next day, and there was nothing to do. Like, my sister lived in a very small place, and she sleeps until super late. She's on a weird schedule. And so I just woke up, and I put on shoes, and I went outside, and I went and ran.
Forrest Gump style.
Yeah, it was legit. Like, I just ran. My goal was to do 3 miles. Did about 3 miles, and then I said, okay, I'll do that tomorrow. And I do that tomorrow. And I didn't stop running a single day it wasn't until after the summer break that I didn't stop running a minimum of 3 miles a day. And there were times in there where, like, I'd get off. I remember at summer break, I was working busing and stuff at a restaurant. I got off at like 10, and I would go home and I would go run in the dark for 3 miles. And I'd just have a good time. And there were snow that when the winter came around, put on a jacket and go run and just be slow and don't slip. Like, it was a true mental fissure that happened, and that helped wonderfully for losing weight initially, but it had a limit because I mean, honestly, I ate like crap still. I didn't really focus on my diet all too much, and that didn't start to shift until I wrote a paper on vegetarianism. And I was like, well, you can't write a paper on vegetarianism and not do it. So I was like, I'll do it until I write this paper. And that lasted about 4 years.
It took you 4 years to write the paper?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I wish. It took me a few months, like a 2-month paper, and at least that's how I planned it out. And then by the time I was like, well, this is kind of cool. I had lost another like 10 pounds during that time.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, I'll stick with this and see what this is like. And it kind of set me off on this path of constantly changing foods and seeing how certain things react to me and like understanding what is in something. And initially back then, a lot of it was just like, what are the calories in it?
Right.
But eventually over time, and especially as a vegetarian, you're not thinking, oh, what's my protein sources? At least I wasn't at that time. I knew that protein was something you needed to get. So sometimes I had tofu, but like, it was not a staple in my diet. It was just more me being like, okay, that has this much, probably should avoid that.
So when you say vegetarian, was it like strict vegetarian, no meat at all, or were you doing eggs and cheese and that kind of stuff?
I did allow cheese.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not like full, it wasn't vegan by any means. And I did allow myself one solace, which was if I caught it and killed it, I could eat it.
There you go. Because you can't give up fishing.
Yeah, because I couldn't give up fishing. I couldn't give up like going out and we'd die for abalone. But let's be honest, I mean, like, that time I probably had meat like once every 3 months. Like, it wasn't something I was really like, nowadays it'd actually be pretty easy for me to get meat. I'm much more steady with that, but back then it just wasn't something I was doing all the time. And so I stuck with it pretty solid. I mean, like, I got meat from time to time, but for the most part it was a lot of it was a lot. Like, here's one part of it was I knew I had this addiction to fast foods. I knew I was hitting up Burger Kings. I was finding ways, but I found ways around that as a vegetarian too. I was like, oh, if I'm a vegetarian, I can't do the double Whopper with cheese, but I can go get a bean burrito. And I can go, like, so I ended up finding myself at like Taco Bell bunch. Yeah. Like, so there still wasn't healthy stuff I was doing. So I lost like 10 pounds and then I had a falter. It just stopped again.
Yeah. When I was in high school, speaking of wrestling in high school, but I also worked at Burger King. And so during the season, my go-to was a veggie Whopper with cheese. It was just a Whopper without the meat.
Oh,
and they would make that. It was like, the upside of it was like 70 cents. So it was super cheap.
Oh, nice.
And it was a good way to cut weight. But
yeah. Yeah, the cutting weight of wrestling is a interesting beast.
Yeah. I'm glad those days are behind
kind of glad I didn't do it in high school because it wasn't as important in middle school.
Right.
Like, yeah, they weighed you and stuff, but they
Right.
weren't like, get under.
Right.
They were like, you're going to fight that big dude if you don't do it. Like, okay. But in high school, they were very regimented.
Oh,
like,
yes.
weight classes coming in, start spitting in a bottle. Like,
Yeah.
oh, God, here it comes. Now you can eat your Jell-O.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, so it started with that and went into kind of the food side. That progressed my running. So I continued to run, and I like always kind of grew up with this like this thought that a marathon was this pinnacle of fitness.
Yeah.
I truly thought like this. I remember seeing it as a kid, like 26 miles, like to run that. Like I ran a mile in high school. I still remember the first time I ran 2 miles. It was on a treadmill. Let's say it wasn't outside. It was on a treadmill. And it was like a little bit after high school, and I ran 2 miles nonstop, and I was like, that was weird. Because I had never done something like that. I was like, they never had us run super distance in high school, unless you were in track or
Right.
cross country and you were training for your 5Ks constantly. And so it was something like I saw, and eventually it was just over time, like you're running 3 miles, hey, today I'll run 5. Oh, hey, I'll just continue on. It turned out to be 7. Before I knew it, I was hitting like 9 or 10, and I was like, I should sign up for one of these things. And that's what really propelled like more of a fitness focus, more slowly, and was just seeing some of these goals in the distance, and just one day at a time, like we'll go through it. And eventually I got my first marathon, probably, it was a little over a year after I had started running.
Okay.
So it was like
A year after you started the 3 miles every
yeah,
day.
exactly.
Okay.
It was a little over a year that I actually was like, okay, I think I'm ready for this, and I signed up for it and went for it.
What was your first marathon? Where was it?
It was Avenue of the Giants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
so it's like
You
it
went
turns
big.
out to be like a
Nice.
really beautiful, crazy
Yeah.
course. And everyone that knows marathons, a lot of them know that.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I ran it twice.
Well,
It
you
was
grew
my
up
first
there
and my
too,
second
so it's
one.
like it's
Yeah.
you're going home, right?
Yeah, I was just like, here it is. I'm like, I'm gonna do this. I'm in college. I can knock this out. So I signed up for it, thinking like this is I need to be so fit. I have to be running constant. Like the training I did for that first marathon is probably more than I've ever done for any event in my entire life. And then I showed up there, and it was like, as you know, a marathon is not. To me, it's like nowadays I'm like a pinnacle of fitness. I'm like, it's a cool event.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful event. I think most people, if you really wanted to, with a lot of determination, you could get through 26 miles in
yeah.
a day,
Yeah.
like right off the couch.
Yeah, yeah.
Now-
Not to make light of the accomplishment, but
no, by no
but it
means.
is definitely something that is accessible to most people.
It's very accessible, and the thing that throws people off is time.
Yeah.
They think about like, I have to run the whole time. That was what I thought. I had to run the whole time, and I had to do it quickly. Right? And so I showed up there, and you're surrounded by people who are tall, short, big, small, all by people with walkers, like canes, all kinds of stuff. And I remember just looking around and being like, you can do that? Like, wait,
Yeah.
you can, this is something I could have just like signed up and walked this thing and had this accomplishment. Not in any ways to knock it down again. It was just one of those like realizations that like certain things and certain fitness goals are well within people's reaches. And it's shocking sometimes the barriers we put between them because of what we see from a magazine or what we see from the outside view of a lot of things. It was kind of a really cool thing when I finally got to, but that really started to avalanche a little bit more into the health and fitness side. Like I started to realize, hey, I'm losing weight. This is possible. A lot of it's figuring out this diet thing. A lot of it's figuring out, getting out there, doing stuff, and getting accustomed to it. And that was probably like the real major start of everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, fast forward from there, how did you get involved in CrossFit?
So graduated college, and I came back here, and a buddy of mine who I knew in the fire department had started a gym on Bainbridge, and he was just like, I went out and played ultimate frisbee with him because you play ultimate frisbee in Humboldt, and he's like, hey, I started this gym. It's CrossFit. And he's all like, and I was like, I can run. I'm fit. Like I'm really good and fit. He's like, you should come in and try it. And I was like, okay, like I'll try it. Whatever. It's just like go support a friend. showed up. First day had running in it, so felt like I was going to be a champion. 400-meter runs. There was wall balls and burpees.
Okay.
So I was like, cool, whatever. You got to throw this thing, cool. It buried me into the ground. The wall balls and burpees, I didn't understand, one, how to like jump back into a burpee.
Yeah.
So still had to do all the whole like step back, awkward. I like the amazing style that people do burpees, especially to me, still astonishes me. Like top level athletes when they just plop and explode. But going through that, and then I remember like getting to the run and being like, this is where I should be good, and I was crawling. Like I was almost walking, and there was, and I hate to say this, and it's not a negative. This woman was amazing. Her name was Diane. She was in her mid-60s, and she ran past me on the runs, and I realized, I was like, there's something wrong in my training. Like, I was like, I should be great, especially here, and because of what I did in there, I'm ruined.
Right.
And I just was like, cool, I'll come back tomorrow. Like, cool, I'll come back tomorrow. And just started to avalanche into CrossFit. And just starting to learn a little bit more, like, I never considered myself a great lifter. I never considered, I had terrible mobility at the time. And it's something I've had to probably work the hardest on of all aspects. But it was just like having something, one, running's great, but it can get boring. It can get super boring. I mean, at the time I started CrossFit, I was running 10 miles a day, 5 days a week. Wow. I had a 10-mile loop that I did, and I did it in the morning or evening. It depended what time it was. I just knock it out, and I had 2 rest days, like a Sunday and a midday week that I just kind of relaxed. And I was like, okay, I could be doing that for an hour and a half, like set up, shower 2 hours or something, or I could go to this gym and we could work out for 30 minutes and I could feel destroyed.
Yeah.
Like I would feel energized after a 10-mile run. I'd be like, oh, that was wonderful, cool. Now I can go and relax. CrossFit was like, I can't drive. Like, this is cool. So that really propelled me into the CrossFit side, was just seeing some of these new aspects and like new challenges. Like I couldn't do a pull-up when I started, so I was, and physically, literally thought it was an impossibility. I hadn't been able to do a pull-up through most of my life, even through all these sports and stuff. So I said, not crazy strong, didn't have a lot of arm muscle especially. And then on top of that, broke my arm. So I thought that was like I was like, well, missed that one. Like that sucks. But there was this like banded pull-ups, and there was these kipping pull-ups, and slowly progressing through one and the other. And I just remember going in every day and hanging there for a second, dropping down, rubbing my arm because it hurts. And the next day, like, how close am I getting? And it was always just chin away. But before you know it, it was just one of those things that just like, it happens.
Right.
And it was crazy like that. So it just always kept like giving me these incentives and presence and stuff to keep pushing through. And really started to fall at it. But I will say, like, I started CrossFit. I was running all that time. I had lost some weight. I still wasn't. Started doing CrossFit and stuff. Still looked like, I have a weird body type maybe, but I was still like chubbyish. Like I was always a little bit, I had like coaches be like, man, you work out all the time. You do all this stuff. Like, why do you don't look different? Like, I was like, I feel different. Like I'm doing burpees better. I'm working out faster. I completed a Fran, but like my body didn't make a lot of changes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is like, was food. Yeah. Was food. I didn't dial in initially as I started CrossFit, still vegetarian. That lasted 4 or 5 months. 4 or 5 months or so. And what it was I was not recovering.
Right.
Like I would go in and do a workout and I would be sore, and I would go in and I'd be more sore, and I would continue the cycle of like perpetual, not even like, oh, this new soreness. It was like, add that soreness. I would go to bed and sometimes I would just be like in pain. And I realized over time, like, I'm missing something.
There's a deficiency.
Right? Exactly. And it was protein. And so I started eating meat. And within weeks, a lot of that started to take care of itself. It was a very fast turnaround when I started to introduce meat. So it was, but this was all very slow process.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I introduced meat, and now I'm still eating a lot of the same crap, but now there's meat in it.
Right.
And then you start to realize, okay, I need to cut out other things. So you start to learn about what is CrossFit. Oh, the zone. Start looking at what is your proportions of meats and your carbs and your fats. What is, now let's start to look into if I just eliminate these pieces, or it became this like almost puzzle for me, and I really enjoy puzzles, and food became this new, hey, if you want to do this, how do you fit the puzzle to make that car run? And it fascinated me. It truly, especially, I mean, it's, something can really take off when you change something and you see a result and you have a reaction to it. Wow, I'm working faster. I feel like I'm recovering faster. I'm not dying on a 500-meter row. I can feel myself hitting a barrier and pushing through. And so there was these big changes that started to occur right then. And that's where I started to see a lot more physical changes, especially with the gym. Was like, granted, like I could see the physical changes in the gym with my weights.
Right.
Deadlifting more, started running faster, did all these other things. But I didn't see like it in the mirror until I really started to focus on food.
Yeah. I had the same experience when I first started CrossFit. The first few months of doing the fitness side of things, everything felt better fitness-wise, and there were some minor changes physically, but it wasn't until I went to my level 1 and they started talking about the zone, because at the time I was still an endurance athlete, and I was like, yeah, whatever, I still need all my carbs, right? Yeah. And so I went to the level 1, I was like, they were right about all the working out side of things. I wonder if they're right about the nutrition side. And I did the zone, and it was just like 3 weeks, and it was, holy crap, like it was shocking how different, how quickly I changed. So I mean, nutrition's key. That's why it's at the base of the pyramid, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So how long were you participating in CrossFit before you decided, hey, I think I'd like to be on the other side of this and start coaching?
It was one of those things that, like, even before CrossFit, when I was running a lot and I had started changing with my diet, I had seen like, hey, certain things work. This would be kind of cool. I remember having a conversation with one of my friends from college, Kaylee, and just, she's like, what do you want to do? I was like, honestly, like, I have been an overweight kid for so long that I would love a chance to be like, hey, here's some things that you can do to actually like help people go through this and make some changes that work. Yeah. I was like, here's things that now granted, that was me scratching the surface of like a gigantic bubble. And it's like, I look back at that kid and realize like, man, you knew nothing. And yet you were still like intrigued in it. And that's, it's like, you already had some little drive towards that side. And then, so there was a little bit of a hinkling even when I was like, this is kind of cool. Like, this might be another step of something you can introduce with all this. At the time I was doing sales for Avalara.
Okay.
Sales tax service was, and so I would spend all my day sitting on a couch or sitting on a chair and making calls. And so in about a year and a half into CrossFit, the owner of the gym had asked me if I was interested. He's like, are you interested in coaching? And I was like, honestly, yeah, I would love to. That would be awesome. And so I went and got my level 1. And it was like a month after that or so, I was thrown into some regular classes and stuff. And I ended up quitting my job and just moving over. I worked at a software company, so I had made a decent amount of money. I was paying pence for where I was living. Like, people would laugh. I was paying $375
oh my gosh.
To stay at a place on Bainbridge Island. It was a trailer, but it was still a place on Bainbridge Island. So it's like, you can't find anything now. And so I had saved up a good amount of money. So I knew that I wasn't going to make a lot of money coaching at the time. Right. I was making like $1,000 a month with all the classes I ended up taking. But I knew I had enough I could like dwindle my savings and like hopefully by then I can get into some more stuff. And so I just kind of jumped into it like full-heartedly. It scared the bejesus out of me. Like, it honestly, that was like probably that one moment where I was like, this is stupid, but you really enjoy this. Like I went to the gym not just for working out. I went there for fun. I went there to have a social, like I went there to hang out afterwards. I would go and show up in regular clothes just to hang out. Right. I just wanted to be there. There's like, everyone knows that moment in CrossFit when the community became like almost more important than the workout. And so I just started having fun with it. And nowadays I'd say it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. At the time, frightening, scared the crap out of me. Eventually I did start working side jobs and stuff to make sure that I had enough money. I was working mowing lawns for golf courses, working country clubs. I did end up souring with that gym and with that owner particularly, and left to go work at a country club again. And
how long did you coach full time though?
I was coaching at that gym. I was coaching for about 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Right around 2 years. Before I was, it was like, I love the gym, don't love the other stuff, and wanted to cut stuff, and I was like, that's a good point for me to exit. Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity, but I'm out. And I started working at a country club full time. I was just very lucky that another person that worked out at the gym knew me and was like, hey, I know you're physical. You can work a shovel, run a tractor. Cool. Here you go. And so I worked at that place for a year and a half or a little over a year. It didn't take long until I was starting to do CrossFit here. I probably had a break of 3-4 months or so where I was like back to running and burpees because I didn't have a weight room or anything, and I was like, oh, I can do these. Lots of Annie.
That explains the double under.
Yeah, exactly. As like one of the things. So, but started working there and did that. I actually ended up moving to a different country club, and I worked there for about a year before eventually getting the full-time gig here, which then I left that and just back to coaching, which was really, really an awesome. I was lucky to tell that person that, like, I have a goal in mind of working at a gym full-time. And he was like, okay. It's like, I'd hate to lose you, but if it happens, it happens. And it happened sooner than I think he wanted.
Right, yeah. So you started working here full-time coaching. When was that?
I don't even know what the year was.
I don't either. 5 years ago? 5 years ago?
Was it 5? It was probably 5.
Feels like it was 5 years ago. I don't know.
Well, see here, wait. I just re-upped my level 2, and I had to get that about so it's about 5 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, and you're one of the few coaches that came in with coaching experience. So you had 2 years of coaching experience. Most of our folks are homegrown and kind of go through our internship process here. But you came in, you're the first full-time employee that we ever hired. So it was kind of wild for us. We knew it was a step that we needed to take. So that was a huge boost for us as a business. But you start coaching full-time, and then when did you start to develop this interest in adding nutrition as something that you were helping coaching people through?
Yeah. It really took me pushing nutrition for my own personal benefit to kind of extremes, I would say. I started working through some challenges of myself, like spending a month cutting out certain foods and dialing in my protein intakes and starting to log my food consistently and see where I kind of where everything was lying at the end of the day, and what am I missing, what am I need to hit, and really kind of dialing in my own self. And it was like the one time I was like, I had that goal, like, let's get abs, like abs is possible, let's do this thing. And I got abs, and I have like a picture to prove it, but but I was also realized that like a lot of me getting to that point was eliminating a lot of the other stuff in my life that I enjoyed, and not just like food wise, but I was avoiding seeing people. Like I was avoiding going out because I didn't want to make. I was like so afraid to lose this progress I had made. Like it was the like fat kid inside of me just being like, don't hold on. But also realizing to a degree like that fitness is wonderful. That being that way, if that's what brings you true happiness, that's great. It wasn't bringing me true happiness.
Yeah.
And so I needed to find a proper balance. Like I was like, abs were cool. But like, where's the balance in life where I can enjoy what I eat, where I can enjoy the people I'm around, but I also can perform in the gym and I can also play around. So it's like, I always like sometimes worry people might look at me and be like, he doesn't look like a nutrition coach. But like, there's this piece of me that's like, yeah, but what are your goals versus what are my goals? And I have to realize like, who I am is different than everyone else.
Yeah.
And there's going to be people out there who are looking for like, I want abs and muscle. There's going to be people, I just want to lose some weight. And there's going to be people like me. It's like, I want a healthy ratio. Like, I want to live life and have a great time. I want to be able to, at a moment's notice, run off and do a crazy hike, or with some training, probably not as much as possible, do a 50K or something like that. So playing around with that balance is really what kind of, like, initially pushing it to extremes, but then beyond that, learning what are the ins and outs of other phases that I want to be in, or of life, and etc.
Yeah.
And so
and I think, I think you said something really important there. And one of the great misconceptions that people have is that, let's say someone has the goal of, I want to be jacked and tan, right? They want to have all the abs and all that, and they think that the only person that can help them get that is someone else who is jacked and tan. And like, you think about that, and like, I always think about this, like when coaches say, hey, I can't do a muscle up, so does that mean I can't be a coach? I'm like, no, like, you don't have to be able to do the thing in order to coach someone to the thing, right? Like, I think the NFL is a great example. Like, look at many head coaches in the NFL. I guarantee you they couldn't throw a 40-yard drop back touchdown pass, right?
Yeah.
But they could coach someone how to do it, right? And so just because someone, doesn't have the physique that you're looking for doesn't mean that they can't coach you to that physique or to that fitness goal or to that performance goal or something like that. I think that's a really, really important concept that people have to grasp. And it's really in diet and nutrition culture, it's really so deeply ingrained that like, well, they don't look like what I want to look like, so they can't help me. And that's just, it's just not right.
Yeah. And I remember when I first started looking at like high school, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start going to the weight room and doing certain things. Like, one of the guys that helped me there was this trainer that used to come in for football and stuff, and he would just show up for a day, and I would just ask him questions like, what are some things I should do? And this dude, he was shorter, he was bald, big belly, but he knew what he was talking about. There was no doubt in what he said, and so I followed the things he said, and I had success. And I still think that person is like a really big influencing factor on certain parts, especially initially as I go. Now, granted, obviously, I had those huge ups and downs. I'd consider my fitness battle to be something over many, many, many years versus like a lot of people want something in several, like, I want this. And I was like, it's in the long haul. It's all about the focus from 10 years from now, from 15, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just like, people have the capability of doing a lot of things. You just have to follow what they tell you sometimes, especially good coaches will know. Like, I think you're 100% true with that one.
Yeah. What is the, so I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the nutrition program involves here. And, how would you summarize the Kids at CrossFit nutrition program? Like, what are the key factors that makes it successful?
I would say balance. This is a good question. Like, I would say the key factors for here is accountability, balance, and consistency.
Yeah.
So you come in here with a goal. What is it that it may be? Because that's going to determine how we go about this and how diligent maybe you want to be. It may be, I just want to gain some muscle mass or something, or I've had people that I just want to gain weight. Like, I have trouble gaining weight, and I'm like, this is fun. Like, this is going to be a lot more enjoyable for when I'm like, why aren't you eating? It's like not something I get to say all the time. So, and then from that goal, we can develop some generalized idea of what do you need to be eating per day. We can work on some of the habits that may not be there. Yeah. So working on like just eating meals, like it's a lot of people skip breakfasts. A lot of people don't have a lunch and then gorge on dinners. I was there at times, but I remember probably one of the biggest key factors for me when it came to food was wake up and eat, have a lunch, have a dinner. Like, make sure you have something after you work out or strenuous exercise. Like being consistent about times, even when sometimes it's not convenient.
Right.
And that's the, like, finding that consistency through your day. I remember days, especially when I was very diligent about my nutrition, coming home after a long day, hard workout, and not being hungry and just being like, I just want to like go to bed, and then making spaghetti squash and making some chicken and like the basic stuff, and just sitting there like, this is good for me. Like, this is my medicine. Like, there are times when it's not fun, but that was in a different extreme case, obviously. But just finding some of those loopholes that maybe they have in their diet currently, and then filling them with the appropriate foods and quantities as we go through there. So.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, if we go back to the beginning point of our discussion, talking about your education background, and you made that switch to communications, and you're talking about in the fire department, everything was about communication. And I think coming back around full circle, the nutrition program is all about communication, right? It's about you communicating to the person that wants nutrition help, but it's also really about them communicating back with you. And I think that's real key. Like, accountability is all about communication, right? Yeah. So that's awesome.
And I also think it's like there's that side, like we talked about, like just because a coach may not have a movement doesn't mean they can't coach it.
Yeah.
It's the same of like the person who has the best movement in the world may not be able to communicate that with someone.
Yeah.
And that can be really tricky. I've always felt that I really benefited from a lot of those communication courses and stuff, from theater, from all kinds of weird ways of talking and communicating and getting points across and information, when it comes to coaching and when it comes to nutrition, because like being out in front of people may not know this, I don't particularly enjoy being the center of attention of a lot of people, which is weird being in theater. Right. I enjoy doing theater, but I still stress to the nines when people are staring at me, like, and that constant stress side. But there's definitely that. I think that's helped me be able to communicate with athletes and get through. And everyone's different. Like, I've still had athletes that I swear I've said the same thing to, or I've said the same thing in multiple different ways, and then they go off and they see someone and they say the same thing I swear I've been saying, and they're like, I learned this new thing, and you're like, that's what I've been trying. High five. Like, exactly. Like, I'm just glad it got to you eventually. I wish it was me. But sometimes, hey, we're all a little different, especially as we go through.
Yeah. Well, what's happened with our nutrition program over the last few years has been pretty amazing. Like, it's really, you've done a great job of building it up and gaining quite a reputation for it. So that's really, really cool. And I think it really just comes down to the fact that you lived it, right? It wasn't just something that you were a coach and you're like, oh, I could take this class and learn how to do nutrition, and then I'm a nutrition coach. But you lived it. Like, this is something that you've experienced. You've gone through the struggles, you've had the ups, you've had the downs. And so when someone comes to you and says, this is what I'm struggling with, you can speak to it from I've experienced that as well. Let me help you get through this because I've done that. So I think that's critical.
And there's a lot of that I would still say like it's still a continual struggle. Like, by no means is because I'm a coach mean that I have it down perfect and pat. Like, I still go home and there are times when I'm like, oh man, like, I don't want to cook dinner, or I don't have anything prepared. What am I going to do? Or like, a lot of those same road bumps still happen to me constantly, or trying to figure out what is going to be the healthiest meal around a family, or etc. Like, it's just a constant work, which is it's part of the thing that I love about it. It's the same with the gym. Like, we still go out and we still train our pull-ups. We still go out there and we still work on our deadlifts. Like, absolutely. I've been continually dialing in my back squat form because it's always been my worst squat. Yeah. Which it pays off over time, but it's still a struggle. You still have ups and downs. So yeah.
All right. So got to know a bit of your backstory. Obviously, we've gotten to know a lot of your passion and kind of where that comes from. I know we've got class coming up here shortly, so I'm going to start to wrap this up. And what I want to do now is I just want to hit you with some rapid fire questions, just so kind of people can get to know you just a little bit more. Nothing too challenging here, but just some simple things that'll give us some insight into Cade. So, all right. So, how many double unders can you do?
So my max was what, 406, 404, 406. I have not repeated that or attempted to repeat that in a while. There was a time when I was stuck at upper twos. I hit 290. This was like super frustrating. 290 like 6. Then I hit 297. Then I hit 298. Like failing at these moments. And then I didn't break 300. I went to 400 and something.
And I remember you almost couldn't walk for a week after that.
My calves were... I was shocked at how bad my calves
locked
up after that.
All right. Switching gears, what's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? This was like... It always tears me up, but Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
Shawshank Redemption, it's not something you want to lightheartedly watch on a Friday. But
it's a heavy one.
It's a heavy one, but... It's a very beautiful movie of the human spirit, but it can be tough to watch sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so we heard a lot about your dad was a commercial fisherman. We know that you like to fish. What's the biggest fish you've ever caught?
Biggest fish I've ever caught. Probably not that crazy big, actually. Honestly, it was probably like a 17-pound king salmon.
Was that on your stand-up paddleboard?
Yeah, I wish. That thing would have taken me for days to pull around. No, luckily that was on a boat. Yeah.
What's your favorite exercise to perform in the gym?
Ooh, that's a good one. I just love squat cleans.
Okay.
Like I like, they're just such a wonderfully beautiful fluid movement, and it doesn't take some of the incredible tough positions that snatches do, but it is just it truly looks elegant to me when it's done well. Okay. And it's just such a cool, powerful movement.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna lift this off the ground. Like I think I just love squat cleans. Power cleans, squat cleans. But.
What's your favorite movement to coach?
Oh, I'd probably double unders. I do really enjoy doing double unders, even though it almost stresses me out to coach, because it's like, come on, good double under guy.
There's high expectations.
Like I should have this, but
no pressure.
But I still really enjoy, because there is a lot of weird technique pieces to it that a lot of people don't recognize, that took me a long time to figure out.
I always tell people when they're new to the gym, I always say, this is the most frustrating movement in all of CrossFit, because it looks like it should be so simple. Yeah. And you can do a couple and you're like, yeah, I got it. And then they just get stuck there forever. It's a weird movement.
Yeah, and there was a long progression there. Like, it wasn't, I came into a gym and understood a jump rope. Like, I came in and I remember just sitting outside of whipping myself for like hours and just constant, like, I'm gonna get this. And then it just slowly progressed from there. But there was a lot of whip marks for me as well.
Yeah. What is your go-to karaoke song?
Go-to karaoke song? Most of the time, it's Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy by Big and Rich. It's country music. It's just right in range. Like, it's such a perfect range for me. It's really easy to belt out, and it's just kind of a fun, hilarious song to come into a bar and sing.
Yeah. Probably unexpected too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, a lot of people would not think like, oh yeah, you chose the country song.
Right.
Because usually a country song turns on and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. So we didn't really go into this too much. You kind of alluded to a little bit, but your musical theater background. Let's wrap this up. Just tell us a little bit about your musical theater background. Like, when did you get started? How many shows have you been in?
I don't know. Quite a few. Probably a dozen or so.
Okay.
I started out in it. It was kind of in college. One of my outlets to mentally was learning the guitar. I tried to teach myself how to play the guitar through the internet, and it worked. Like, there's things I don't understand about the guitar that some people do that I'm like, that was beyond my YouTube and random searching capabilities. But I started to learn to play the guitar. I thought it would be cool if I could play and sing. And so I started doing like some open mic nights and stuff. And a buddy of mine who was in the fire department originally, he does CrossFit too. He was saying, hey, I'm in this show. They lost. It was Cabaret, which is based in Germany before World War II. the build up to World War II. And he's like, we need a Nazi soldier who can sing. And I was like, well, sadly, I kind of fit that description. I'm like German background. This will work. And so showed up, and they were like, yeah, cool, just throw in. And so I did this musical. I had like 2 lines. Basically, a lady would call me a name, and it was the wrong name, and I'd be like, it's Rudy, and then I would walk off. And I would sit in the background in the ensemble and sing along. And it was really enjoyable, but in the area I was like on Bainbridge at that time, there wasn't a lot of men in the 20s, in their 20s, that were like wanting to sing in front of a bunch of people in a theater group. And men in their 20s is a very key demographic in a lot of musicals.
Right.
And so I just started having people message me like, hey, do you want to do this? So I went from that to Cats. And then I went from Cats to Brigadoon. And so I just started bouncing in between these and getting bigger roles and more solo parts. And it was just kind of this avalanche of fun. And I did do it once in high school. We had this like winter one act. And it wasn't a musical. It was just a regular play. And that really was just like me being a senior and being like, I'm going to do something crazy. And they were like, we have winter one act. So I was like, put my name on it. Like, let's do this. And I just ended up doing it, having a blast. And it was kind of something that like had someone offered me like, hey, we got this role in something, I probably would have said no had I not done that.
Yeah.
But coming into it, just got to experience more and more through that theater, through that program, and just had fun, like a lot of fun. There's few things before the very opening night show that feel that chaotic and gut-wrenching before you walk on stage that you learn to weirdly love.
Yeah.
Like you're just so frightened, but at the same time you get out there and you do it, and it's a wild adrenaline rush because you could just fail miserably at any moment. And I have on stage literally like cut off half of a song, and luckily I had a background of musicians who heard that I screwed up and somehow managed to just wrap it up and be like, and done. So they're like, we all have our failures on stage, but it's just so much fun. Yeah, it really is.
It's cool. You know, we've had the good fortune of seeing you on stage in a couple productions, and it's super impressive. It's really fun to watch. So I don't know if you have any plans for anything in the future, but if you guys if you hear that Cade's in a production, I highly recommend getting out and checking it out. It really is impressive, and it allows you to see a side of Cade that you don't. Some people have gotten a glimpse of it here in the gym, but most people don't get a chance to see it here in the gym, and so really cool. Hey, Cade, thanks for joining us. Awesome to just get a little bit of your background and talk about some of your passions. And I look forward to having some more conversations with you in the future where we can talk a little bit more specifically about things with regard to nutrition and such.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to.
A lot of fun. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And again, be sure to click like and subscribe. Share the link with folks that you think might benefit or enjoy watching the show. Thank you.
There's also, just in case, I sang something recently, but it was all recorded.
Really?
And it's kind of like a spring fundraiser they're doing for Ovation Musical Theater. So I sang 2 songs, If I Were a Rich Man from Fiddler on the Roof, and On the Street Where You Live from My Fair Lady. And so whether they cut that out, I don't know. No, cut. But that might come out, and you might see it on Facebook. I'm sure I'll share it on.
Yeah, be sure to share that. That'd be awesome. So
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.